Hello, my name is 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚝, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how the scene that ended the newest chapter with Kuma meeting Dragon and all that stuff, what it might symbolically hint to, and ultimately what type of message may be being sent. Now, I think what's actually being said, if it's revealed in the next chapter or not or whatever, I don't really think that it's gonna be all of it anyway, if that makes any sense. Like, whatever we're going to hear is not the overall first purpose for why Kuma's here, and this video is going to get into that in ways that I really have not seen explored too much, and mainly how all of this, I think, is a big hint to the true cipher of the gods in this one-piece telephone game of messengers, and I suppose a sort of godly retribution system, all taking advantage of that divinity. That sounds crazy, so let's get started. So the last chapter of One Piece 1058 ended with Kuma meeting up with Dragon and the rest of the Revolutionaries, and then they answer a call from Sabo. Now, obviously, this scene is extremely reminiscent of when Frankie arrived back to Sabaody and found Kuma had guarded the 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚑 ship during the duration of the 2-year time skip, except that he's missing the Bible here, and I think that Bible thing is extremely important. Kuma is the only person we've seen with the Bible, aside from one other instance that I've found, which is actually the person who gives the execution order at Nolan's execution. He's actually holding a Bible while he does it too. So I do wonder, I will touch on later in the video some ideas about religion, the idea relating maybe to being a sword of religion type of thing. But this entire meeting and 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚑𝚝 call, I have to bring up chapter 858, and it's this cool cover we get where the Straw Hats are playing football and one team's the Bisons and one team's the Monkeys, and I will touch on this Bison thing later on when we get to Crocodile's bounty, believe it or not. But this is the chapter where we hear about Lola's escaped engagement with the Loki, Prince of Elbaf, and mainly it's the chapter with the Big Godfather meeting where 𝚘𝚙𝚌𝚒𝚐𝚑𝚝 and Caesar and Sanji and Luffy and Jinbei are all meeting to figure out a plan to crash Big Mom's wedding. And this is actually the last chapter of volume 85. But this whole entire scene is weird where they're talking about that 𝚘𝚘𝚌𝚒𝚑𝚝, I've got it all arranged in exacting detail, and he's looking at Luffy here pretty intently, and when we look through the light through this little 3 hours and 20 minutes into the Tea Party box, it's directly around the Straw Hats' Jolly Roger. Now, 3 hours and 20 minutes is 200 minutes, and 200 chapters from this chapter is this newest chapter 1058, and I think that on one hand I think it could just be Oda showing just how exact he has planned every single minute detail out for the entire manga, every single chapter, everything from the beginning, kind of just showing exactly how much he's had that planned out, and that this, in 200 chapters, Jinbei would be joining the crew and we would get the final saga-ready version of the Straw Hat Pirates. Basically, the Straw Hat Pirate crew at its full form to start the end of the story, which is kind of what we have here with the Straw Hats and their amped-up bounties and everything. But I also think that it's much more plot relevant to the story and what's about to happen right now. All of this exacting detail is kind of Vegapunk planning his coup on the world government, so to speak. And I think that Vegapunk's plan begins with Kuma meeting back up with the Revolutionaries, and I really wonder if he's about to be voice activated in some way by Sabo over the 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚑𝚝, who, if you've watched my other chapter review videos, I believe that lots is going on inside of Sabo. Sadly, little of which is the Sabo that we actually know. And this idea that Dragon's asking him to tell him everything that he's seen, to me, really relates back to his pawpaw fruit that Kuma used to have, or still has, whatever. When it comes to dogs and animals, especially dogs, and there's all this stuff with marines and dogs and sea dogs and sharks and all sorts of crazy things like that, but when it comes to dogs, they communicate between themselves mostly non-verbally. Dogs almost exclusively use their paws to communicate to humans and to show humans what they see. And considering the fact that Kuma has bear ears or lion ears, I think he's a big tie to a type of old ancient kingdom, animal kingdom type thing, and the idea that he is a connection between that kingdom and the humans, or at least has been used against them for the humans, is gonna be a huge reveal coming up soon, maybe even in these coming chapters with Kuma, if he doesn't just straight blow up right here, like with a self-destruct command. And I am later in the video going to be touching much more on the idea of a sword of religion in regards to Crocodile and Mihawk. But for right here with Kuma and this idea of dogs communicating with humans, I have two wonderful little Shiba Inu dogs. They are my whole world. My wife and I, they are like our kids. But on paper, we just strictly going off of that. Humans are considered a higher life form than dogs. Now, what's interesting to me about that and this word dog and being a dog of the military, like in Full Metal Alchemist and all that stuff, is the word God backwards is dog. So I really wonder how much of which higher life forms communicating to who throughout all these interactions is, the gods that rule men communicating through the animals to humans, or animals to, all this stuff going on. But messengers being sent from the powers that be above them, I think is all that's happening in this chapter.
This is how we testify.
Ugh. Can't you see you're not making Christianity better? You're just making rock and roll worse.
You people are all the same. You look at us and think we're freaks. Come on, even Jesus had long hair.
Only because I wasn't his dad.
But we need to focus on this moment where Kuma has reunited with the Revolutionary Army and Dragon and this entire scene. And like always, I have some pretty serious questions. One, why does Dragon care if King Cobra was killed? Now, I think maybe you can argue that Dragon is worried from a PR standpoint what the look of killing the world nobles and kings and stuff like that in the One Piece world and the various countries and stuff like that, how that would look to them and how the revolutionaries would be perceived by them and, would hurt the cause, I guess. Maybe, I think you could argue that, but we have not heard explicitly that they are non-violent protesters or revolutionaries or whatever. We have seen them, partaking in, war practices and stuff like that. So I do not believe that they are an all-peace type organization, or at least not a purely pacifist outfit. And then, maybe you could argue that Dragon would be upset that Sabo killed King Cobra because King Cobra was an ally in taking out the pirates or the Shichibukai or whatever. Which I think is an actually very valid argument, because I believe that the main point of the revolutionaries is not really to fuck with anything that the celestial dragons have going on, but more to sow dissent and take out and influence pirates all over the world. I don't really think they're the liberators that I think a lot of readers might credit them as. And I know that can sound real harsh and abrasive and just out of pocket, but we've only actually seen members of the Revolutionary Army fight pirates. We have not actually seen them in person with our eyes liberating anyone from the celestial dragons themselves. Maybe we've heard about it, but we have not seen it. So I do actually believe that it's a possibility that Dragon is upset at Sabo if he killed King Cobra, because King Cobra had such a huge part in taking down the 7 warlords. And while I do believe that as a factor, I am leaning more towards the majority of his anger at Sabo's reported actions because it affects these celestial dragons and the world nobles, or at least some bloodline of them, at least related to them in some way. I believe that that's why Dragon would be upset, because it was directly wiping out and killing something maybe related to the world government bloodlines that they want to keep intact and in power. Which really makes me wonder, with all the things that we've supposedly heard about and learned about from the poneglyphs in the ancient kingdom about the One Piece and what the ancient weapons are, it really makes me wonder about what the revolutionaries are actually after, because it would make sense that if the One Piece is in some way a device or a apparatus or a weapon that can be used to free the world, why wouldn't the revolutionaries, why wouldn't that be the top of their list of things to get and hunt down? Instead of always sitting there just doing nothing and just listening to the wind that Dragon is always doing, why not just go get the One Piece or whatever, because it might help you for that. Now, I don't actually think that's what the One Piece is, but as far as the people in the One Piece world are concerned, that could be a possibility. Now, obviously you can argue that there's no way that they know that and they wouldn't be after the One Piece to free the world or whatever. So then, are they after the ancient weapons? And maybe you could say that all this time that they've spent, at least since Sabo was a kid and they seem to have formed, that entire time they've been freeing, citizens and slaves and countries around the One Piece world. But it doesn't really seem like their cause really had a lot of new members until very recently, when those new 8 kingdoms kind of joined after the Reverie. Now, all of those 8 kingdoms that joined are actually food. All their names are references to food, and to me, I think it's all a huge clue that it's all a recipe for disaster, and that someone behind everywhere is kind of pulling the strings and controlling everything and kind of mixing up all the ingredients to get a certain, I guess, world cleansing dish prepared and ready to be served. Now I'm only not kidding at all. And now I myself like to fashion myself, and at least in my head call myself a manga artist. I actually have been drawing my own manga for the last number of years. My website sadly just crashed beyond my repair, and I have not been able to afford to have it fixed. So until then, I have uploaded all my chapters onto my Patreon for free. Go check it out sometime. It's called the Shonen Beat. But as a manga artist, with over 1,000 pages to their name, whatever amount of readable manga pages that qualifies my opinion as an artist in some way. When drawing a manga page, there is thought put into every single line, and a certain amount of time is spent on every single page. And I get so many people saying things, and I hear it all the time about you're putting too much thought into stuff, and it's like one manga page probably takes like 8 to 10 hours sometimes to draw. And some people won't spend more than a few seconds thinking about a panel. That's not what we do on this channel. We go into every single line. And now we're going to start with this page right here. We're going to look at this whole message thing with Kuma. Now, from the very start, let's look at who actually receives the message. It's Koala. We, of course, met Koala during the Fisher Tiger flashback. And unbeknownst to her or the entire Sun Pirate crew, it was all actually a trap set up by the Marines to catch Fisher Tiger and ultimately lead to his, kill him. And sadly, with her and this whole phone call thing, and like I was saying before with the kind of recipe for disaster with the food in the newly joined countries revolting against the world government, I do actually think that this is all kind of sadly a trap. Now, do I think it's to the extent of Order 66 that Joe 3 Skulls on Twitter has presented? Well, I actually think it's a hell of a lot worse. I believe that everything that's happening right now and everything that's happened in the last few chapters have all kind of been the beginning of the end. And right now, what that means is that the Marines have enacted the plan that resets the world once the One Piece is started. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but everything I think that we've kind of seen happen has been the beginning precautions, pretty much the initiation of the Order 66 from the Star Wars movies, and when Emperor Palpatine commanded all the Jedis to be killed by the clone troopers.
The time has come. Execute Order 66.
Yes, my lord.
I do think that is a similar type trap is being set off across the One Piece universe. It's just not just here. It's also in the Cross Guild. It's also in the Straw Hat Pirates. It's also in Wano. It's on Law's crew. It's on Kid's crew. There's these black hat spies everywhere. And I believe that they're all kind of being switched on, and that it's all because, the story is about to end and the One Piece is going to be found. But in the One Piece universe, what that means is nothing at all what you're thinking.
I've stumbled onto a major company conspiracy, Mac. How about that for stress?
What the hell are you talking about?
This company is being bled like a stuck pig, Mac, and I got a paper trail to prove it. Check this out.
And that's because I believe in part the One Piece is a propaganda machine, or a sort of deus ex machina machine, that's all working together in one piece to pretty much keep the world the way it is in the One Piece world, to keep the celestial dragons at the top, I guess. And we've seen all these memes and stuff like that going around about how the One Piece is real.
The One Piece! The One Piece is real!
And, you know, it's really funny to me because if you own a volume, you actually can hold a piece of it in your hands. It's literally realer than anything you can picture in your head right now. Okay? If you actually own a physical volume, if you hold it in your hands right now, that is realer than any version of the One Piece treasure can be that you can imagine, because it's actually literally there in reality. And I think that's part of the joke, because the One Piece is real. It's a manga series. You're reading it. The treasure in the One Piece world is not, and it's all a kind of sort of propaganda machine, I believe, to make sure that people aren't trying to become king of the world. They're trying to become the fucking idiot king of pirates. And I mean that with all due respect. And what I ultimately mean by that is that in the One Piece world, the Marines have utilized finding the One Piece as sort of a world reset when someone is too close to actually tearing down the real pillars of power. If there's ever a pirate, like maybe Rox 𝙲𝚘𝚎𝚝 or Monkey D. Luffy, that are actually getting close to really changing the world in a meaningful way for the better and actually tearing down the power systems that exist in the One Piece world, I believe they kind of set off this plan where the One Piece is essentially found, but part of that is that there are betrayals in every single form you can imagine, in every single crew you can imagine, which ultimately end in someone named the Pirate King saying what the Marines want them to the world and being put to death. And what's really messed up is I think it's kind of just been turned on for the entire rest of the world here. It's actually been enacted for Luffy in particular since chapter 1, but I need tons more videos to explain all that stuff before the story's over. Driving back around to that original question of why would Dragon be so upset if Cobra was killed here, it's because in some form in his programming, I believe that Dragon ultimately works for the Celestial Dragons, and everything he's doing is kind of a false flag operation that doesn't ultimately affect the Celestial Dragons to the extent that anyone thinks that it might. And you can point to the simple fact that Luffy's done more liberating in, 3 months of story time than Dragon has in his lifetime, it seems like. And there's a ton of clues where it does seem like Dragon probably worked at Impel Down or came from Impel Down. And I believe you have to watch my one retrospective review thing where I go over the Nika chapter, but there's a whole ton of stuff I think about how Who's Who was specifically sent there to give us information and the Straw Hat Pirates information about a Nika god, and it gets, all implanted there. I think Dragon is a very similar situation for much bigger aspects of the story. I actually think that all of this messenger of God and being in servitude of the powers that be and the powers that control the One Piece world is ultimately been hinted at by Kuma and his design and accessory choice since his introduction. And to be frank, I think one example of this kind of using words and religion to be weaponized would kind of be the Bible and the wars fought in the Crusades and all sorts of things relating to that. I do kind of believe is what's being hinted at with Kuma and this tyrant clue and the fact that he even has a Bible in the first place. Words that drive man to do things, good or bad. And I actually have a video coming out, hopefully this coming week, all about the kind of the sheriff of the Grand Lie and how it relates specifically to the Sword organization and how they might use words to divide and cut up the One Piece world and to keep it that way. And how people can be imprisoned to those words and books and doctrines. And I believe that Kuma's original color scheme of it, that orange suit that he had, was a big reference to a character being imprisoned and jailed. And with the title of this video being the Cipher Poll of the Gods, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't go into the word cipher a little bit. Now, for one, right off the bat, the word cipher, you can do a bunch of anagrams with it, like re-chip, which makes me kind of think of livestock and the chips that they get, which I talk about in this video. But another anagram is actually the name 𝚑𝚗, which is a name of Croatian and Serbian ancestry and is derived from Petro or Peter from the Greek word Petrus, which means rock. Now that rock thing might not sound important at all, but I do think there's a lot to the idea that 𝚬𝚘𝚏 here looks an awful lot like the silhouette that we've gotten of 𝙲𝚘𝚙𝚒𝚑𝚝 of the Rocks Pirates. So I believe that that is something that's at play here. And the idea that this was kind of our first showing, at least timeline-wise, not what we actually saw in the pages of the story, but timeline-wise, this was at the time our earliest meeting of the cipher pole. But if that still sounds like it's an irrelevant clue, then please allow me to go more into this cipher word and some names that it's connected to. So as a name, cipher is an Americanized spelling of the German cipher or Cipher. And as a name, Cipher means victory and peace, which a ton of names seem to mean that when you really look into them, but it essentially means peace of victory. But if we break the word and name down a little further, Ciph was an occupational word for a soap maker, which I do think is a huge thing that I'm not going to touch on here, I apologize. But in Arabic, it's the word safe or saif, all still stemming from that cipher word and name. In Arabic means sword, and that in particularly the name can mean sword of religion. So this idea of weaponizing words, because sword, just take off the S and put it at the end of the word sword and you get the word words. I believe that's all kind of tying to this clue of the cipher of the gods, which is one part of the misinformation campaign that the world government uses to control the One Piece world. But also to me ties directly into the Rocks once again with the, all we know about Rocks is defeat and vanishing at God Valley. That God Valley, God and sort of religion and all that stuff. To me, it's not too much of a stretch that they all might be connected as some big clue. And then I think a very, very real option, kind of touching on Joe Three Skulls' ideas with the R2-D2 equivalent of Kuma and kind of bringing a message from Princess Leia. I do believe that she could have a message from Vivi, that Kuma could have been sent here by Vivi with a message to deliver to Dragon in hopes of maybe getting it to Luffy. And I believe that message is do not trust Sabo. It is not him on the inside. That's going to do it for this video. My name is 𝙗𝚘𝚏𝚑𝚝. Please like the video if you liked it and comment what you think of these crazy ideas. And subscribe if you're interested in weekly. And I'm trying to at least do 1 or 2, maybe even 3 sometimes videos a week if I can do these kind of shorter ideas and get them out quicker. And I'll be I'm hoping to be doing more videos on series like Berserk and Game of Thrones and maybe even Lord of the Rings. Not the new series, but the old book series and stuff like that. It's just, it's all taking time, and kind of One Piece is, to me, the hottest thing because it's, my favorite. And the clues just never seem to end. But thank you so much for watching. My name is 𝙗𝚘𝚏𝚑𝚝, and I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.